Hi, and welcome to the F1 Time Portal, F1 history podcast by two Formula One nerds. I'm your host, Rosa.
And I'm your other host, Luigi. And today we're going to finish off a very interesting 1956 season. So let's go. So we continue on with race 4 of 7 of the 1956 season, and that's the French Grand Prix, which is the 1st of July, 61 lap race, 21 drivers, and a 3x2x3 grid formation. Now, BRM were absent again, so Mike Hawthorn was loaned to Vanwall.
Hang on, didn't he have a massive fight with the owner of Vanwall and Mike drop and leave?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yes.
But you know what? Maybe in those days they didn't get caught up in stuff.
Yeah.
maybe there was an element of
just get on with
families
it.
Fight and they stick together again.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
It was a very tight-knit Formula One community.
Yeah. I think it's nice that they had this ability to look past their previous indiscretions.
Petty squabbles.
Now, this is the big news. There was a certain Colin Chapman that we talked about earlier who actually took the place of Trintignant, who was away from the Vanwall team to drive for the Bugatti car.
The Colin Chapman, engineer, the Lotus guy, he's driving in a race.
Yeah.
Wow.
The one and only. This is like, to put it in perspective, this is like Adrian Newey giving it a go. Like suddenly see Perez let Newey have a go. So it's like Max Verstappen and Adrian Newey.
Wow.
So that's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Well, I guess it makes sense though, because I guess if you build fast cars, it helps if you also know how to drive fast cars, doesn't it? It would help.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot. And these guys are very competitive.
Yeah.
As well. Their competitive spirit is being released.
Yeah.
So we have a Colin Chapman in the race, and this is a very special occasion for that to happen. So practice started on Wednesday, and there were 100 bottles of champagne on offer for the first driver to lap in over 200 kilometres an hour.
That is so typical French. They can't win. Their cars aren't good enough, but they'll win over the crowd with free champagne. I bet there was no drink responsibly slogan on that campaign either.
Yeah. Yeah, for those that may not be knowing what we're talking about, in 2023 and maybe the last few years, we've seen constant drink responsibly, towards zero.
Yes.
Things like that, right?
Yeah.
Very prominent campaign. Who's paying for these campaigns?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, this must be the French government.
Yeah. So, Hawthorn in the Vanwall collected that prize, and he set a time of 2 minutes and 29 seconds. Now, note this is not for pole position because Fangio and Moss weren't even there on Wednesday, but it would have added excitement to the practice day.
I think it's something they should consider for today's F1. They're struggling to make the sprint races relevant. So there's an idea. Bring back the old 100 bottles of champagne campaign.
Yeah.
They might have a bit of a problem with that, I think.
Yeah, in this PC world we live in now.
Yeah.
So nowadays in this era of health, it might be 100 bottles of fresh cold-pressed juices or
no one's going to race for that.
Mineral water.
No one's going to race for that, Luigi.
So on Thursday, the big players arrive and Fangio showed the way with the fastest time of 2 minutes 23.9, followed by Castellotti and Collins.
All for Lancia Ferrari front row.
Yeah. And the next 3 places were Vanwall, which was Shell, Chapman and Hawthorn.
So Chapman's right up there.
Yeah. It's funny that, isn't it, to see his name on the second row?
Yeah.
But there are 2 things to note. It seems that Chapman's time was set by Shell. And the only way I can work this out is during qualifying, Chapman's car had a brake lock up and he actually hit his teammate Hawthorn. This resulted in both cars being damaged, with his own car damaged beyond repair. So unfortunately, Chapman would be a non-starter.
Oh, Wow, what a sliding doors moment, hey? Imagine if he could have started that race and what might have happened, and probably what might not have been able to happen. Maybe we wouldn't have seen Lotus, or, yeah, that's a very interesting sliding doors moment. His destiny was for the engineering side rather than the racing side, it seems.
And I don't think he ever entered another race as a driver, so
okay.
He may have just been scared. Let's face it. These cars were not...
No.
Like we've talked about, no seatbelts.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, tyres that are no thicker than a motorbike's tyres.
Yeah.
Driving at 200 kilometres an hour average speed, which means you're doing a lot more than 200 most of the time because the corners are shorter and you're doing longer, faster straights.
Yes. Well, it's interesting.
I would have been scared. I would have only done one race as well. I probably would have hit Hawthorne's car on purpose to make sure I don't start the race and die.
Well, it's interesting because the cars he built were actually really scary cars. So
yeah,
it didn't affect his engineering at all.
Interesting that. So on Sunday race day, as flag fell, everyone surged forward except Villaraci in the Maserati, who qualified 10th. Villaraci started last, pretty much after requiring a push start.
We're seeing more and more nonsense starts. This was a nonsense start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of our listeners can do this for me or for us. Have a summary of the nonsense start drivers and who are the nonsense champions.
Yeah, okay.
But we only mention the nonsense starts primarily from the drivers that are noticeable.
Yes.
So there could be a whole lot of midfield and back end drivers that are permanently dominating these nonsense championships, but we're not even noticing them.
We should have the F1 Time Portal Nonsense Championship. Every year.
We'll keep a close eye on this every year, every race. We have to nominate a nonsense. Who was your nonsense driver of the race? Let's try to remember that. Let's see how we go.
See how we go.
But this is not a complete jokey podcast. So let's not.
No.
Let's do it. Let's try to do it. So at the front, the Lancia Ferraris held their front row start with Castellotti leading Fangio and Collins. So that's Castellotti leading. By lap 3, Hawthorne in his Vanwall had moved up to 4th place, but he could make no impact on the leading Lancia Ferrari trio up front. After 6 laps, Shell in the Vanwall was forced to retire due to over-revving engine, and surprisingly, he took over Hawthorne's Vanwall. It seemed that Hawthorne was tired after driving in the 12-hour sports car race preceding the Grand Prix.
What do you mean? A 12-hour sports car race just before this Grand Prix, like the day before?
Yeah.
What?
It's a bit crazy. And you know the funny thing is, remember how Ferrari said he left Ferrari because he wanted to drive sports cars?
Yes.
Well, what's this saying? Enzo was right.
Yes, Enzo knew what he was doing. Yeah.
I'll make a bet as Hawthorne stepped out of the car all exhausted, probably stumbling out, Enzo Ferrari was standing 10 metres away, looking straight at him and shaking his head, looking down and shaking his head.
Yep.
And probably whispered to someone in Italian, go and tell him I told you so. Because he wouldn't do it himself. No. He sends other people to do that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Exactly.
So this left Shell in 8th place, but on a charge. Moss was next to retire. So this is like the retirement era, really, isn't it?
Yes.
With a broken gear lever. But like Shell, he took over Perdisa's car, who was running in 9th place.
Again, Perdisa. Okay, we have to now talk about him a bit more. So, in 1956, he was 24 years old, a real young gun. He's Italian, and his first name is Cesare. He actually competed in
if his first name was Luigi,
I know.
If his name was Luigi, that would have been... That would have changed. I would have switched to Perdisa.
I was going to say, would you adopt him as your hero? Yeah. He actually competed in 8 races and he achieved 2 podiums. Well, good on him. The mere fact that we're giving him this time on this podcast is clearly a feather in his cap, Luigi. But an interesting story about Perdisa is a few months after he retired, he hit the news in September 1957. Well, that's a bit of a spoiler. When he rushed Juan Manuel Fangio and his wife Andrea to a hospital in Bologna. The couple had been thrown from their 2.5-litre Lancia while trying to avoid a truck entering the highway. They were travelling at close to 100 miles per hour. Fangio's car was smashed into a pole, and luckily he and his wife only sustained minor injuries.
Let's just unpack this for a second.
Yeah.
They were travelling at 100 miles an hour. That's 160 kilometres an hour.
Yeah. On a highway.
They were thrown from their cars.
Yeah.
They were thrown from, so no seatbelts.
No seatbelts, no.
I am so, this can't be true. How do you survive?
I know.
And have minor injuries.
We've heard of so many other drivers like dying in road accidents, like not in races, just in road accidents. And Fangio survives this one. And Perdisa is there on the spot to take them to the hospital.
And I dare anyone to challenge anyone. Has anyone given as much airtime to Perdisa as what we just had in any Formula One podcast of all time?
I don't think. I think
dare.
We'll win that one, Louis.
Yeah, we'll win that one.
Yeah.
And it can't count after. If they do a podcast about Perdisa after, it doesn't count. No. It's got to be before the date this one was published. And I think we are the world number one Perdisa podcast reference podcast. Yeah. Oh, let's not say fan club. Let's not go too far here.
Well, you were going to adopt him as your hero.
Only if he was called Luigi Perdisa.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Let's find out. He might have Luigi as a middle name, knowing this was the era of Luigi. Yes. Very likely.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. Perdisa played a part in Formula One history after all, and we've given him special attention. So back to the race. Schell was driving in a very determined manner and was actually driving faster than Fangio in the lead. By lap 20, Schell had moved up into 4th place.
So also about this time, the revolutionary rear-engined Bugatti, driven by Trintignant, who qualified 18 out of 20, quietly retired. No one was meant to notice after a very disappointing performance.
Yeah, I wonder if Trintignant regretted taking on this car, considering the van walls were on the second row of this grid.
Yeah.
But the seeds of the rear-engine car were planted, and we will watch this space. So it's about lap 20, and Schell was less than 30 seconds behind the leading Ferrari trio of now Fangio in the lead, Collins and Castellotti. The Ferrari pit team were unperturbed, thinking that he was a lap behind and not realising that he was now driving Hawthorne's car. Remember, Hawthorne backed out because he was tired, exhausted.
Yes. This reminds me of the Ferrari pit wall of 2022. Remember, Luigi? So many rookie mistakes. Are they even watching this race? How could they not realise that he was driving Hawthorne's car?
It's like, I'm surprised this sort of error doesn't happen more often.
No.
There's less complexity, but they should have been watching this race. I mean...
Yeah. What are they doing in there?
This is the guy behind them.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Ferrari team were just chilling out, giving no warning to the Ferrari drivers of the approaching van wall. Because remember, Schell was on fire at this stage.
Yes.
Until Schell was right behind Collins. By this time, it was too late, and under braking, Schell forced his way past both Collins and Castellotti and actually set out after Fangio.
Surely this isn't the first time that this has happened in a race, or is it?
Well, you know the rules, Rosa.
Yeah,
if we read it first in this book, it's the first time it happened. So, yes, this is the first time it's ever happened that the team didn't realise that the driver was actually on the same lap as their drivers and was a real threat, and not even telling their drivers that the threat was coming.
And, of course, it had to be Ferrari. Like, it's just not professional. And I think this is why Ferrari comes under so much criticism all throughout their history, really, because they're a big team. They've got the resources.
Yeah.
They've got the money. They've got people. Everyone wants to go and work there. Big team, and they just make such basic mistakes.
But to me, it's just phenomenal that it's in their DNA. All the way through. This is, I mean, we've seen a few examples of this already. Ugolini set the bar pretty high to make it memorable.
Or low.
This is this is a good mediumer, you know, like a good medium stuff.
It's just basic though. Like, I don't know. I we are not going to be. We don't want to be racist here at all. But you know, there is something about Italians being very. I mean, I'm Italian background, so sometimes I just take things a bit too easy. But maybe. But hopefully, let's at least give. I'm going to make a very complimentary comment here. Okay, go for it.
At least Ferrari are fighting for the wins.
Yes,
up the front.
They
not
are.
like the French teams that we don't even talk about.
No, that's right.
So they could be making 10 times these errors.
Yeah,
and we're not even noticing.
Well, no, they're probably watching the race diligently, but all of their cars are at the back of the pack.
Yeah. So to the race, with Shell now in second place and charging, Fangio responded to the challenge and began to pull away. Then a ferocious battle took place between Shell, Collins and Castellotti as they passed and repassed one another on numerous occasions. Sounds pretty exciting.
Yes.
Shell began to fall away from the second and third place Ferrari drivers eventually, until on lap 38 he was forced to stop for a new fuel injection pump.
He's actually providing a lot of excitement for this race. He's American, isn't he, Luigi? Shell?
He is. We haven't given him much airtime yet, but we might do that soon. We might give him a little bit of a spill, because he's a bit of an active driver and there's not many US drivers here. And look, let's give due credit. He's here. He's not at the Indy 500.
Exactly.
So he's a good American.
Yeah.
Shell does end up finishing, but unfortunately in 10th place because of the issues with the car. On lap 40, Fangio had a fuel line issue and he drew into the pits for repairs. When he returned, he was in 4th place, and despite a determined effort, including setting fastest lap, he failed to catch Berra for 3rd place and had to be content with 4th.
What about the lead of the race?
Well, you may recall Collins and Castellotti were battling with Shell in second before Fangio had his problem.
Yep.
So they were dueling for the lead. But after 50 laps of the 61-lap race, the Ferrari team called it and put on the pit board Cole, Cass, which means Collins and Castellotti. So Collins wins by just 0.3 seconds.
Team orders, Louis. That team orders, stop fighting, and Collins has to go in front of Castellotti. Makes you think that Castellotti could have won that.
Yeah, I mean, to be 0.3 behind, Castellotti was trying to make a point, wasn't he?
Yep.
And I doubt Collins was chilling out.
No.
With Castellotti right next to him
there,
the whole time. Yeah. Interesting. So the final result, Collins wins the race. This is his second win of the season, I think. It is. He won the last race.
Oh.
Then Castellotti second, Berra third, Fangio fourth, and Perdisa Moss combination in fifth.
Right. So, the World Driver Championship standings are Collins in the Lancia Ferrari on 19, Berra in the Maserati on 14, Fangio then in the other Lancia Ferrari on 13, and Moss in the Maserati on 12. So, still pretty close.
Collins got a bit of a lead though.
He does. Yeah.
Won the last 2 races as well, so he's on a bit of a roll. Yeah. So up to the British Grand Prix. This is race 5 of 7. 5 of the 7 that count. July 14. 101 laps. There's 28 drivers in this race, and it's a 4x3x4 grid formation.
So, the race is back at Silverstone this year, because I think they're alternating the race between Silverstone and Aintree at this point. And finally, BRM were at last out in full with cars for all of their 3 drivers, Hawthorn, Brooks and Flockhart. Pretty good timing for their home race.
Of course, that's all part of their strategy, and they're now an adult team.
Yes.
Because maybe they're going to be in the race and set times and everything.
Wow.
Not just turn up and be at the back.
Yes.
So here they are. So the grid was to be established by Thursday's practice times, and BRM did not disappoint. So while Moss in his Maserati grabbed pole with 1 minute 41, Fangio followed in his Lancia Ferrari, and then Hawthorn in the BRM, and Collins rounding out the front row.
So Collins in a BRM, driving for BRM, and he's made 3rd.
No, Hawthorn.
Oh, sorry, Hawthorn. Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Hawthorn in the BRM, driving for BRM, and he's made 3rd. So that's pretty good.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah. So maybe they were worth waiting for. So at race start, Hawthorn shot into the lead. So this BRM's not too bad off the line. Gonzalez, now in the van wall, had a drive shaft brake and hardly moved. This created quite a lot of concern because cars pretty much had to dodge either side of him at the start of the race. Obviously, these cars are at full throttle. So at the front, Hawthorn pulled away, and Brooks, also in the BRM, soon joined him in 2nd place. And that's amazing because Brooks actually qualified 9th. So this BRM's not too bad off the line and not too bad at the start. The rest followed tightly behind, with Fangio 3rd, Shell 4th and Castellotti 5th. By lap 5, Fangio had dislodged Brooks from 2nd place, and then 2 laps later, Fangio spun and Brooks regained 2nd place. A bit of excitement there. And another little error by Fangio, by the way.
Yes.
Now it was Moss who was up to 3rd place, and he was challenging Brooks and his BRM for 2nd. Then on lap 11, Moss himself moved up to 2nd place, and then Moss started to reel in Hawthorn.
That BRM is still up there, and with Moss reeling in Hawthorn, you could say that, that was his British nemesis.
Yeah, but isn't Hawthorn living the dream in Moss's eyes? Like he's leading the British Grand Prix in a British car.
Yes. Yeah.
As a Briton.
Yes.
So probably a little bit of fire in Moss as he's driving. What was Moss driving again? Moss was driving the Maserati. He was driving the Maserati. So he was driving the enemy car.
Yes.
Yeah. So by lap 15, Moss slipped past into the lead. I'm sure he'd want the win over the car, perhaps. Fangio was also making solid progress after his spin as well. So by about this time, Hawthorn was losing ground because he had an oil issue, and by lap 24, he had pulled into the pits to retire.
Oh, what a pity. He really had a good pace in this race. Would have been interesting to see how he finished it off.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Moss continued to increase his lead, and for several laps, there was little change. Then on lap 40, Brooks had a problem, and he had a broken throttle cable, and he applied a temporary repair.
What do you mean? He fixed it while he was driving?
Yeah, of course, temporarily to enable himself to get back to the pits.
Oh my God. Did he have some tools in the car? How did he do that? He was just holding it?
I don't know. It's crazy, yeah. I don't know how he effected a temporary repair, but yeah, he must have been holding it.
Must have been holding
it. Accelerating with his hand or something. It's interesting wording, isn't it?
Yes.
A broken throttle cable.
Yeah.
Did he when the cable broke, did he quickly just use his arm to grab it before it flicked down into where the pedals are?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Anyway, he effected the repairs, and while in the pits, Brooks was delayed by several minutes. So when he did resume, so they took longer than him to repair, obviously, the
well,
cable.
It wasn't a temporary repair.
Yeah, they did a permanent repair. Yeah. So when he did resume, he failed to complete another lap, unfortunately, as he spun his car. His car was overturned and he was thrown out of the car. The car caught fire and was burnt out.
God, well, that'll teach him for trying to do his own repairs.
I mean, we can only make this joke because he was okay.
Yes, absolutely.
By the way.
Yes.
So, yeah, don't make your own repairs.
Yeah, and
Okay,
in this era, don't have a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have been
that time
caught in
comes
that.
later.
Yeah.
So more retirements were to come. On lap 59, Salvatore in the Maserati retired, now with fuel starvation.
What? What's he going to do? Weld the fuel lines together while he's driving?
Yeah, I mean, why can't he do a temporary repair?
That's right.
Where's the line?
Yeah.
So, lap 64, Collins retired with falling oil pressure. So, De Portago, who was in fourth place, was called to hand in his car over to Collins. De Portago had done well to this point because he qualified 12th, so to get up to fourth is not bad for what we call the midfield drivers we don't talk about. So congratulations, De Portago, for getting a mention.
So
this left Moss and Fangio.
Sorry, Lloyd. Do you know that he's a Spanish driver and he's actually related to the future King of Spain? I did come across.
Really?
Yes. Yep.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Very
Is
interesting.
Is he a paid driver, maybe?
Maybe.
Is he a paid driver?
Another sort of royalty, isn't he? He's sort of related to the royalty of Spain. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So this left Moss and Fangio out on their own up front. However, lap 69, Moss stopped to investigate a loss of power. After ignition leads were changed, he rejoined the race in second place, but he lost ground rapidly and he would shortly retire. Collins moved up to second place in De Portago's car, and the race ended without further incident. So Fangio won this race with De Portago, Collins in second, Berra in the Maserati third, which is a pretty good result because he qualified way down.
Okay.
So, and I'll just mention one more quick thing before you do the championship standings. Isn't Berra just up there constantly this season?
He is. Did you say that he doesn't ever win a championship?
Race.
It doesn't even ever win a race.
No.
Wow.
But he's on the podium lots.
Yeah, he is. Yes.
I think we might need to do some side episodes about some of these drivers.
I agree.
Yeah, like people like Berra, De Portago, Perdiso, these drivers, and Shell, drivers that are interesting but not quite hugely successful enough.
No, yeah. Okay, so
how's the championship looking? Yeah.
Collins is up there on 22 points now. Fangio on 21, so it's the two Ferraris, 1-2. Berra on 18 and Moss on 13. So it's, the two Ferraris and the two Maseratis.
Yeah, and with Berra really being the only one that's sort of close.
Yeah, close to the Ferraris.
Yeah. Okay, so we're up to the second to last race 6 of 7. So we're up to the German Grand Prix. This race was on the 5th of August, 22 laps, 22 drivers, and a 4x3x4 grid formation. So despite Germany not being that far from Britain, no British team entered the German Grand Prix. So that was obviously my opinion that Germany is not far from Britain, but it's not.
It's closer than Argentina.
Yeah.
And hang on, and it's not that far from France, and they were in the French Grand Prix, weren't they? The BRM team.
Who knows?
But that just means now that there's only the Italian teams and the two Gordinis on the grid.
Luckily, these British teams were not in the running for any championships.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that's also why they weren't there.
Yeah, maybe. So this left pure domination by the Lancia Ferraris, with Fangio setting pole position with 9 minutes 51.2. Remember, this is a 22-kilometre race track. Collins and Castellotti taking the first 3 positions on the grid, so that's a Ferrari position 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
And the only drivers lapping under 10 minutes.
So Moss did well to qualify in 4th then. I mean, he was lapping in 10 minutes and 3.4 seconds.
Yeah, so he was up there. So at race start, Collins launched into the lead, closely followed by Fangio, Moss and Castellotti. So good start by Collins. And these cars changed positions over the opening laps.
Well, with each lap being about 10 minutes, that they were dueling quite a lot. We can't underestimate how hard that actually was racing at this track.
So on lap 2, news came that Fangio had just broken Herman Lang's 1939 record with a time of 9 minutes 51, which actually created quite a bit of excitement in the race. So it's nice to see a record go. The retirement list, however, was growing by this time, but up front, Fangio and Collins were just the clear leaders.
The Collins looks like he's taken over the 1954 Mercedes Moss position, and he's just always in Fangio's shadow, isn't he?
Yeah. Having said that, though, Collins has won 2 races this year and is leading the championship.
Yes.
But you're right, the feeling is that.
The feeling is there.
Despite the fact Collins is leading the championship. It doesn't feel like it.
No, it doesn't.
So, And Berra was 3rd, leading the rest.
Good on Berra. I like him. He's French, isn't he, Berra? Yes, he is.
Yeah, we need to give him a special episode.
We'll have to do a bit of research on him.
So the race had turned processional at this stage until lap 9. Remember, this is 10-minute lap, right? 10-minute lap times. On lap 9, when Collins drove into the pits, he was dizzy with fumes from a leaking fuel pipe. Meanwhile, Castellotti, who had already retired, was waiting to take over from Musso.
Luigi Musso? Not again. Poor Luigi.
Yeah, we're not hearing much about Musso.
No.
Not this season. So apparently Musso was slowing due to not feeling well from a crash during a 1,000-kilometre race back in May 1956. So consequently, there was some confusion as Castellotti leapt into Collins' Lancia Ferrari by mistake. Fortunately, Musso arrived to the pits at that very second, and Castellotti eventually restarted in the right car.
What? Does that mean that if Castellotti sits in Collins's car, even if it's for a microsecond, that he gets his points as well?
Funny idea. That why don't the Ferraris all just pit at the same time, and the drivers do really fast, sit, and get triple. You know what I mean? Like just in case.
No, surely there would be rules around that. Surely you couldn't get points for a lower position if you got points sharing in a higher car. Surely.
Why not?
Oh, come on.
I'm sure we've had this happen. Where the same driver appears on the same top 6. I'm going to look later.
Actually, I think you're right. I think it happened in that Argentinian race where there was so many driver switches because of the heat.
Yeah, where there was, you mean the 9/14?
Yes,
points?
yes.
Yeah. But that is hilarious that Castellotti went in the wrong car.
Oh, my God.
Briefly.
Again, it's a Ferrari. Yeah. It's a Ferrari mistake.
Yeah, it's Ferrari. It's got to be Ferrari, doesn't it? And look at this. And Musso did this 1,000-kilometre race.
Yes.
And there's Enzo shaking his head in the back again. Enzo, you were right.
Yep.
So, during all this activity at the pits, Fangio is still setting new records, and after 11 laps, was leading Moss by over 20 seconds.
We're only halfway through the race. This is like a 22-lap race, and we've already had so much drama.
So, Collins, having recovered
both physically and psychologically
from the messed up car swap incident in the pits, rejoined the race in Deportago's car and set after Berra. While he caught and passed Berra, he then had a problem, as on lap 15 he spun off the circuit and retired. So it's Fangio leading still, with Moss second and Berra a distant third. Still up there, always Berra. That should be Berra's slogan.
Yes.
Always Berra.
Is he a little bit
always
like
there? Is
he a little bit like Berger or Barrichello? Can't think of another guy that was just always. Oh, Coulthard. Coulthard was sort of always there, but thereabouts. But he never really, Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
You wouldn't rely on him to go and take a charge and take the win. He wasn't that sort of a driver.
But he's just consistent and there.
Okay, so past Berra, and then I mentioned he retired. So it's Fangio leading still, Moss second, Berra third, which I've mentioned. Interestingly, Halford in the Maserati found himself up into 4th place. However, he was push started by outsiders following a spin and was given the black flag.
Where's Ugolini? Come on. He's going to put in some sort of protest. Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, they gave him a black flag, so maybe all of Ugolini's protests means that now they're giving out black flags for this stuff.
Yeah, I could just see. I mean, they didn't have big screens to show it, did they?
No.
But if there was a big screen at this 56 race, Ugolini would have been shaking his head, looking at the screen, pointing.
That's right. Yeah.
Getting protests ready.
That's right. Not happy.
Yeah. So we had a very typical podium of Fangio leading with winning the race, with Moss second and Berra third. And only those three were on the same lap. And the rest of the drivers were in the following positions and quite a fair way behind. And they're what I call the no-name drivers. Gaudier, 2 laps behind. Rosia, 3 laps behind. Volontario, 6 laps behind. And again, we mean all due respect with those drivers. We're making a joke of it, but they're not main players.
So, interestingly, Fangio has leapt into the lead, Luigi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's on 30 points now, and then Collins is on 22. So got a little bit of a break on Collins as well. Berra is also on 22 and Moss is on 19.
So Fangio's got one hand on the prize because what is it, 8 points for the win, 1 point for the fastest lap. So Collins needs a little bit of a miracle to get this.
Well, Collins and Berra can still, I think they can still win. But anyway, let's keep going. I'll figure that out in a minute.
Yeah, so we've got the last race of the season, the Italian Grand Prix, September the 2nd. 50 laps, 25 drivers, and a 3x3x3 grid formation. So what's the we've got a championship decider here. So what's the
I think
you've already told us the points, but what's the situation?
Well, I actually think this is the first season where the championship can be decided on the last race. I think every other race the drivers won it.
No, actually.
With lots of races to go.
No, remember, you may recall with the 1950 championship, there was suspicion.
Oh, that's right.
There was suspicion that they gave it to
Farina
because they wanted an Italian driver to get it.
Yes, they did. Anyway, so both Collins and Berra still have a chance of overhauling Fangio, but they each had to get the win, and they had to set the fastest lap to do it.
And not share a car with anyone else.
And not share any cars. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Which was the fashion.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So pretty easy requirements to win the championship. And for Berra, it would have been an amazing first way to win his first race and to win the championship. But that's assuming Fangio didn't score any more points. But I think Fangio had already reached his maximum points, so he had to drop points at this stage.
Okay, right.
Still a big ask to win the race against Fangio.
Yeah, at Monza.
Yeah. So this is the last race of the 56th season, and the race drew a very strong crowd.
BRM absent again. Really disappointing. They did so well at the British Grand Prix, but they've probably missed more races than they've been at. So I think it's turned out to be a pretty bad move for Hawthorn.
Yeah, and the British Grand Prix is a bit of a power circuit, and this Italian Grand Prix is a power circuit, and BRM did great at Silverstone. So I don't know why. Big opportunity gone begging, right? So Lancia Ferrari were in trouble from the start. Their tired treads were lifting on the concrete banking. In spite of this, they were setting the pace, and Fangio recorded the fastest lap of 2 minutes 42.6 seconds. The front row was still all Lancia Ferrari despite those tread issues, with Fangio, Castellotti and Luigi Musso. Notice how I have to say Luigi.
I was just going to say, you're saying Luigi on purpose now.
Yeah. However, Taruffi did an amazing job in the Vanwall, actually landing 4th on the grid.
It's pretty good for Vanwall. 4th there with Taruffi.
So the race also had a special driver making his attempted debut, and that's a driver called Wolfgang von Trips in the Lancia Ferrari, I think a privateer one. Now, he had an accident during practice, and unfortunately damaged his car sufficiently to stop him taking the start. But we'll be hearing more about Von Trips in the years ahead. So at race start, Musso and Castellotti shot into the lead, and I have to take a quote here from the book called Grand Prix by Mike Lang. And this is the quote. Despite pit signals, both were driving as if in opposing teams.
That's funny. And because they're Ferraris, it makes it even better.
I know. It's just amazing to think that that's how they described it. And I love that term. It adds an extra degree of bitterness to the add extra spice, you know?
Yes.
Last race of the season, they went for it.
Mm-hmm.
So for 4 laps, this brutal dueling continued. And ironically, they both dove into the pits on lap 5 with their tyres in shreds.
Wow. What was happening behind that start?
Oh, they must have just had a great time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They just destroyed each other's races though.
Yes.
I mean, they were in the Ferrari on the home track. Musso in particular being an Italian driver.
Yes.
Probably a lot of pride. Yeah. So Fangio, Moss, Collins and Scholl were just behind, but constantly changing positions. And this battle had just become the battle for the lead after the two crazy guys destroyed their tyres at the front.
Yeah, but this is becoming an awesome race and battle for the championship now.
Yeah. And this battle for the lead was primarily between Moss and Scholl.
Oh, well, where did they qualify?
Let me just check. Moss qualified 6th and Scholl in 10th. And Scholl was more often than not holding the lead. So you basically had using qualifying 10th ahead of 6th and brutal battles going on. So in the meantime, Fangio and Collins sat behind until Collins had to drop out for a new tyre. But that's not all. While this battle for the lead perpetually raged, so it would have been awesome to watch this, there was drama behind as De Portago also had his tyre shred, sending his car sliding down the banking at around 250 kilometres an hour.
Wow.
Amazingly, De Portago escaped injury and was able to drive his car to the pits and retire with a bent suspension. Then 3 laps later, Castellotti lost yet another tread and he was forced out after spinning wildly and hit a barrier.
Did you say barrier? Like an actual safety barrier? Not a safety hay bale or a safety hedge?
They didn't say safety.
Okay.
They didn't say safety. Barrier. It could have just been a brick wall that happened to be there.
So can I just ask a question? You might not know the answer to this. Are they still using that banking section today at Monza? Is it still there?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
No, they stopped using that many. It's still there as heritage, and you can see trees growing around it and weeds on the bottom of it.
Okay.
But it's for anyone to look, you should look up the Monza banking. I wish they still had it because it looks awesome.
Well, it creates a very interesting race with all these tyre treads.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you that are following us on the socials, maybe drop some images in the socials of the Monza banking from this era because it's great to see.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are going to put up pictures from those eras in these pages anyway. So all the while this was going on, the 3 leaders were staying close with Scholl, Moss and Fangio battling it out. Berra had steadily moved up to 4th place. He was some way behind, but ahead of Musso, Maggioli, Collins and others. Suddenly, on lap 19, Fangio dove into the pits with a broken steering arm. His championship hopes were pretty much fading at this stage.
Hey.
Castellotti took over Fangio's ailing car. So there you go. Fangio's got his little whipping boy in Castellotti. Here, take my damaged car. Give it a spin. Yeah. Give me some points. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe.
Yeah. At about this time, rain impacted the track and Moss began to pull away from Scholl. By lap 25, Moss was 13 seconds ahead of Scholl, with Musso now up to 3rd place following Berra's retirement. Shell stopped for fuel on lap 28, which let Musso up to second place, but Musso stopped on lap 30 for a tyre check.
Yeah, well, this is the tyre shredding track on the Lancia Ferrari, so I'm not surprised he stopped.
So everyone expected Fangio to take over Musso's car, but guess what? Fangio, who's fighting for the championship, Musso insisted on continuing.
God. What? Why? That is just crazy. I mean, Fangio's in line to win the championship, not Musso. Again, Ferrari, like, you have to laugh.
What's Enzo doing now?
I don't know.
He must be having an epileptic fit or something.
Yes.
I'm imagining Enzo introduced a new rule after this race. He basically gets a bouncer type of person to stand in the corner of the and Fangio and Enzo just points.
Yes.
And that bouncer just
takes him
picks
out.
Musso up by just lifts him out of the car and just carries him away.
Yeah.
Just takes him out of the car and carries. There's no seatbelt, of course. So it's just a matter of the bigger, stronger guy lifts the smaller F1 driver type.
Hey, and like this is like Fangio's a 2-time world champion by this stage, or 3-time. Like
what is it? This is 56, so 3-time. Yeah.
3 times. So what the hell is Musso trying to do?
What's Ferrari doing?
What?
Musso's not in the running.
No.
He's not in the running.
Gosh,
this is crazy.
This
is why Ferrari, this is the DNA of Ferrari right here.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So at this point, Berra has retired and he hasn't come back yet, but Collins is still in the race. So Collins can still beat Fangio if he gets fastest lap and wins the race.
Yeah. So with Shell retiring with transmission problems and he was soaked in oil, Moss was left out way in front ahead of Musso, Collins, Flockhart and Berra. Now, Musso, in the car that he refused to give up.
Yes. Okay, and Berra's back.
With Collins behind.
Yeah, okay, but Berra's now back.
Car.
He's in Maggioli's car.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Right, so they're all doing car swaps and, yes, and Berra is Maserati's Fangio.
Correct.
And
lap 35, Collins then comes in for a tyre check and was now in with a real chance of taking the championship. But no.
What?
I said, but no.
Okay, hit me.
Okay, so when it's a really important thing, I always resort to just quoting straight from Mike Lang's Grand Prix book.
Yeah.
And I read out his quote.
Okay.
Instead, Collins produced one of the finest acts of sportsmanship ever seen in motor racing. He handed his car over to Fangio.
No way.
Yeah.
My gosh. Yes way. So if he didn't hand his car over, Fangio out of the race, he was going to be the world champion.
I don't quite know because it depends on who wins this race.
Well, he would have had a chance to win it, I guess.
Well, yeah, possibly, because in those days, what I do notice happens is, let's say Moss was winning the race and Collins was second. It's quite possible that Moss may have waved Collins through because he's not in the championship battle.
Okay, yep.
Sometimes that happens.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if that was going to happen in this race, but regardless, the moment Collins handed the car to Fangio, he was eliminating himself 100%.
I mean, as we said, when we pinned those moments back up the top there in Monaco, he has been deferring to Fangio all season, waving him through, giving him his car to finish that Monaco race, but now giving him
remember he was catching Moss.
Yes.
And he gave the car to Fangio.
Yes, and now he's given him the car.
He wouldn't be 8 points behind. He wouldn't be 8 points behind at this stage. He'd be much closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now he's giving him his car again to finish this race and take the championship potentially from Collins.
Yeah.
I that would never happen today. Like, no way. Like, could you imagine Alonso, could you imagine anyone on the grid today doing that for their teammate?
Nobody.
No one.
Maybe. No, there is one person.
Is that?
Come on.
Who?
Leclerc is such a nice guy.
Yes, he is a nice guy. Yeah,
He'd probably hand it to Sainz. Sainz, you're not going to be in a top team like Ferrari anymore, so you can have this one.
You know who he would hand it to? He would 100% hand it to Hamilton. Now you've got me scared. Now you've got me scared.
Yeah. 25, here we come.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is, he was asked why he did this gesture, as in Collins was asked, and his response was along the lines of, he had plenty of other opportunities to win the title, because at this stage, Fangio was 45 and Collins was quite the youngster at 25. So he felt, I've got 20 years on this guy.
Why do I have a bad feeling about that?
It never works, does it?
No.
You've got to take it when you can.
Take it when it's
just
there.
The way it is in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on lap 45, Moss ran out of fuel. Now remember, Collins was second.
Yes.
And as he was coasting to a halt, Piatti, in 7th place, tucked in behind his team leader and pushed him back to the pits to refuel.
Wow. Okay. Who's Piatti? We need to know more about him. Why are there so many drivers doing these like Good Samaritan deeds?
They're wrecking the reputation of the 50s. Because the 50s is aggressive racing.
Yes.
And then they do this extreme opposite aggressive racing. But it is cute to
it is
visualize
yes.
Piatti pushing Moss's car.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one hell of a race. I mean, you've got Collins handing his car over to Fangio. You've got Piatti doing this little special what's not tandem driving. It's, when they are very well coordinated. There's a term for that.
I don't know.
It's gapped me now.
And then you've got Musso not handing his car to the reigning world champion.
Yeah. Musso living up to the name Luigi.
Yeah, that's right. Hang on, what's this guy's first name?
Piotto.
Yeah.
Guess what?
It's not Luigi.
It is Luigi Piotto. Okay. So now we have to talk about him because his name's Luigi, because he did the world's greatest gesture in Formula One, which is push his team leader to the pits. Yeah. So he participated in 9 races. He did not score any points, but he did do this amazing gesture during the race. Luigi Piotto.
Hats off to him. Hats off.
So Moss, having been given a bit of a push to the pits, was away in a flash, but Luigi Musso had gone by. And Fangio in Collins' car was closing in.
God.
Musso's lead lasted little more than a lap, as on lap 47, now this is a 50-lap race, a lot of excitement towards the end, his steering arm broke and he came to a halt in front of the pits.
Oh my gosh. Did Musso have a crazy race or what? Like dueling with his teammate, shredding his tyres, refusing to give his car to the leading champion contender, and somehow with 3 laps to go and the end in sight, he has to retire. Well, is there some karma there, Luigi?
Yeah, us Luigi's, bit of drama on that one.
Yes.
Pretty memorable race for him.
It is.
But double Luigi activity in this race.
I know, you've got the good Luigi and the not so good Luigi.
Yeah, there was a good and evil. Yeah.
Yes.
So Moss, meanwhile, was setting fastest lap times in his efforts to keep Fangio behind. And despite having to ease off on the final lap with an almost bowled tyre, he went on to win by just 5.7 seconds. So Fangio, though, was a world champion again, and he would always acknowledge that he owed a great deal of this to Collins for the title.
Yeah, absolutely he would. My gosh. Well, it's his 4th title and 3rd in a row.
The final results of this race: Moss first, Collins Fangio 2nd, Flockhart in the Connaught 3rd. So we barely gave any attention to these other guys because there was so much other activity going on.
Yeah.
Godier in the Maserati 4th, Fairman in the Connaught 5th, and the only reason I went up to 6th was that's where Luigi Piotto finished in the Maserati.
Good on him.
And we had to cover off where he finished. So,
yes. Yeah.
So what was the final championship standings then?
So, yeah, you were right. Fangio stays on 30 because he'd already amassed his 5 best races. Moss on 27, Collins on 25. So he didn't even finish second. And Bearer on 22. Wow.
Yeah, so what are the final takeaways for this season? First of all, I'd say this season has been amazingly tight. And what really stood out to me was the huge number of retirements and, as usual, so much ultra-close racing. And I think this might be my favourite season so far. And I think a lot of this is reflected in that first 5 laps of this Italian Grand Prix when Musso and Castellotti shredded their tyres trying to duel each other like they were on opposing teams. I think that really captured the essence of the season for me. How about you?
Yeah, it was a fantastic end to the championship. I think, like, apart from the 1950 season where there was a bit of weird wrangling of, I think they managed the finish of that one. This season really came down to the last race of the season and everyone was up for it. And such unusual circumstances. I don't think we'll ever see that happen ever again. No. So, yeah, very close. And just another interesting fact, until the 2006 season, this was the last season during which no British constructor won any championship race. So the British are coming, Louis.
Well, it doesn't help if you don't turn up to most of the races.
That's true.
That's for BRM.
Yes.
But Van Wall were there.
There's that saying.
BRM. They did that. BRM looked good, though. They looked good. When they turned up. So
yeah, well, there is that saying, you've got to be in it to win it. And, they were not in it. Like, they just didn't turn up.
No.
Anyway.
Definitely not.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next week for 1957.
Okay, bye.
Bye. We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, go and sign up at patreon.com/F1 Time Portal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.